Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Sam, the founder and CMO at UTTR. Hello Sam.
Hey, Christian, thanks for having me. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining the podcast. At first, please tell us what your company does.
So company is, like you said, Utter or Up and to the Right. And what we do is we are a B2B performance marketing agency for SaaS and tech companies. We primarily do paid marketing, but our premise is that paid marketing doesn't work on its own. So we help grow companies with paid marketing, RevOps, creative, and website work to support that.
What would you say is the biggest problem that you solve for B2B companies?
How to grow, and it's how to grow with predictable pipeline. Like I think marketing in a B2B setting, can't always be accountable to revenue, but it can be accountable for pipeline. And so we work with companies like, how do we build predictable pipeline with paid marketing?
Is there a minimum number of employees, revenue, I guess, to have a product market fit before a company needs to come to you?
Yes, it's something that's evolved over time. I think ideally, it's a company that probably has like one marketing resource in house that, has shown that they can convert, or has some customers initially. Our sweet spot's probably Series A, B, but we've worked either side. I think it's a case of like, does the company have the right mindset to start doing paid advertising? Like, if I give one example, working with a company that's just launched its product, and it's like it wants to work out like, hey, who's our right customers, and can we use paid marketing for that? And that works for us because like they've got a mature mindset towards paid advertising. So in short, probably Series A, B, where companies are ready to invest something proven, but right people, you can always make it work.
Do they have to have some campaigns before, or can it be just from the beginning?
Just from the beginning. Sometimes it's better. I'd say, like a third, you come in, they've never done paid advertising. You're like, let's work this out from scratch. A third have tried things before, and you're like, okay, we need to improve on this. And a third, it's gone well, and it's like, how do we go to the next level? So definitely not always. They can come to us from scratch. It often do.
What companies is paid ads basically for every B2B company? Because there's always a debate if you can find the right channels, right, to target the audience and retargeting and everything. So what would you say to B2B companies that are, let's say, not that sure about the power of paid ads?
I think it can work for everyone. It works to different degrees. Like I think of paid advertising as a distribution channel, right? Or you have your core message, and then you decide, am I going to distribute this organically or paid advertising? And to me, like paid advertising is a way to speed up the timeline of how do I get my message in front of more people. And that's why I think it can work for most. Like not everyone can have the same like channel. Like if it's a newer solution, something like Google doesn't work as well. But
yes,
I think paid ads can work for everyone. It's just to what degree is the question.
Right, and you have multiple channels depending on the audience, the LinkedIn and the Google for more business executives, and then you have also Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, right?
Yeah, and I think like those latter two, as your price point comes down, if say like SMB or prosumer targeting, they come into play, and then and on the B2B, like on the mid-market enterprise end, you also have like what I'll call like paid media publications. Like it's probably something that's underused within B2B because it's more manual. But like if you are say you're targeting accounting professionals, like there's a lot of publications that accountants read that you can get your message in front of. And so that's another channel that I think underused, but to me fits within the paid media world.
And now let's take a dive into the process. Let's say you take a Series A company. What are the first steps that you do into their company to change and to make this shift into starting and growing and successfully having ROI with paid ads?
Yeah. So should we assume this company's never done paid advertising before?
Better.
So I think like before you get into paid advertising, there's maybe like, if I think of B2B marketing, there's like 5 things you've got to tick off, and paid marketing is a portion of that. So prior to that, it's like you need to nail your positioning, your like who you want to go after and the narrative that you're telling in the market. So it's like, is that settled, or does that need work on? The second is like you need a strong brand identity and a website that clearly says things. If you don't have those two, then like the paid advertising, you can do it, but it's not going to be near as effective. And the third is do you actually have a revenue operations in place? Can we measure the impact? Do sales, like how many times do you see paid leads come in and then no one from sales is working and it's not connected? So the systems in place for a marketing or sales handoff and the measurement in place. And so those 3 are like foundational table stakes before you even can get into paid advertising. And that's why I said before, like we're a paid advertising agency, but we have these other teams because what we've learned is you can't just run ads. You need to have these foundations in place. So that's sort of part 1.
Mm-hmm.
I would say. And then from there, it's like, okay, we have like long-term brand, like demand creation, like brand awareness type things, and short-term like demand capture, like how are we getting people like that are in market now? And it's getting a balance of the 2 of those. How much investment do we want to do for short-term? How much do we want to do for long-term? And convincing companies at a Series A stage to do a bit of both is like way harder than it should be, but every tech company wants results now, and starting to invest from there. And then once we have that in place, part 1, those foundations, part 2, like the balance of investment, it's a case of like doing a lot of testing around audiences and creative and getting that balance right from testing. And to be now the creative process and the creative strategy and the messaging behind it is more important than the targeting. And that's like a switch in B2B that's probably happened more over the last several years, like creative is everything. And so you test, and then from there scale. But that's sort of the quick answer of like how I'd approach it with a Series A.
And do you act mostly as consultants, helping with advice, and they have to launch the campaigns and test everything, or do you do it for themselves?
We both execute. I couldn't just consult as a company. I think like it. There's just so much in actually being in the weeds, doing the work, and so no, execute on all of those in the tools, design the assets, build the videos, be in the HubSpot system, etc. Yeah.
Do you think that AI impacted or changed anything in the paid ads game? Because everybody says that now you can launch so many creatives, so many texts, you can see faster the conversions, the comparisons. So I'm curious about your take on this.
Yeah. It's slowly impacting it. I think like everything else, like it's not like a one. Like I mean, now if you looked at Google Ads and where it has its like AI functionality of like, hey, like give me an image, it's kind of crap. Like the images aren't good now, but you can see like it's gonna get pretty good soon. So it's like, where are we on that journey? I think like more broadly, like where is like the journey that we've seen over the last, and even think pre-ChatGPT and now is like the platforms are trying to take away the sort of controls that paid and performance marketers have. They're trying to make it like they use, I think, more AI machine learning on their end to find the right audience.
Yes.
Which is something you don't necessarily see, but I think a far bigger part is they're like, trust us to find the right people. And that's gone a lot further. Like Performance Max from Google would be an example of that.
Yes.
And then on our end, like the and our second end, like the creative side of things, I think the platforms aren't quite there, but they'll be there soon in terms of it. So all in all, like that journey of like technology slowly, like these platforms taking control more, it has been occurring, and the rate will increase there. Yeah.
I agree with you. And I'm curious to know about a minimum budget. Let's say a Series A company wants to test this channel. wants to get an agency to start this and to invest some budgets, what do you say is the minimum amount of resources? Also in people, do they need to have someone full time for this, or yeah?
Yeah, I think you can start to learn with a budget of 2 to 3K a month, and
Okay.
like look, the more you spend, the better the learnings. Like I would say, a lot of companies come and at that stage, and they're like, "Hey, we just want to test the waters. We want to get some insights. Like bring it back, maybe to the board, to the exec team, and they want to be as minimal as possible."
Yeah.
And so, if you're like, if I'll go around, but come back to your question. If you think about testing in B2B, you never can get statistical significance. Like at some point, you have to have like a judgment call from a human in there. And so if you're like, okay, I need roughly a cost per lead at $150, say, then if a campaign spends $500 or a test spends $500 and there's nothing there, like general rule of thumb, if you spend 3x the cost per lead, it's unlikely to improve. Now that's not 100%, but like this is where the sort of judgment science comes in. And so if you can think of a few tests like that with 2 to 3K, you can start to run like 5 or 6 different tests, which across audience and creative. Now that gives you something of least like, can I find one campaign I could scale? I think that's like the minimum, and it's the real minimum of which to start and to learn from. In terms of like the people, the resources you need around it, like you need like someone that can execute on it, and you need someone that can like creative and design it and write on that. I think like some companies, you can do that with 2 freelancers or an agency. There's different combos of it. I mean, I think the one I try and tell is founders not to do it themselves. I've seen some founders that are amazing at it, but that's because they're founders and they just have that breadth of talent. But yeah, I'd say that's the minimum.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I expected a lot more, but it's good for B2B companies to know that it's not that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge.
And I'm like, you're not gonna shatter your targets with 3K a month in 3 months, but like, can you start to make some learnings of which like help to inform the business? Yeah, I think so. And probably the more important part is it's always time versus money. Like sometimes startups are like, hey, I've got a little more time. I'd rather go slower and and just start to get some learnings as we're working on product. And I think that's where those lower budgets can be relevant.
Do you prefer any industries for Utter, or is it industry agnostic? Just have to be B2B?
Yeah, just we're reasonably industry agnostic. I'd say like a couple areas where we've leaned into like prosumer AI tools, which I call like B2B, which are like on the other end, which they're used in a professional capacity there. Healthcare B2B, which is like the other end, selling into pharmaceuticals, selling into hospitals, selling to doctors.
Okay.
And then maybe within that, like broad, like financial tech, fintech selling to the CFO. And then I'd say commercial real estate tech, like 4 areas like that we've sort of got a higher concentration of clients. And I think when you work on more, you start to learn some of the nuances there, but a wide breadth of industries we cover, and most of the problems are similar.
What would you say is something that B2B companies need to know before starting paid ads in order to have their expectations right?
Yeah, I think the trouble is that like you can get some quick wins to start with, but like over time you're going to get the marginal return comes from investing awareness and getting returns there. That's the toughest conversation to have at the moment. I think is that not enough companies are like, how do I do paid advertising now that impacts my pipeline next quarter. Everyone's like, how do I do paid advertising now that impacts my pipeline this quarter? And that's the big opportunity now. And it comes from different, doing more awareness advertising, changing the messaging slightly. Then that's the opportunity, but that's the one that's harder to, convince people on that haven't done paid advertising before. They want to see, the performance, the metrics now. So, I'd say that's one part of it. And then if you are doing short-term advertising, when I say short-term, like converting now, you still really do have to work those leads aggressively. I think people think like inbound means, meeting booked. Inbound lead doesn't mean that. It still means you need to have like a fast follow-up and aggressive cadence, and sell these people. So those would be two things I think often come up.
Now, I'm curious about the story of the company, the story of Utter. Mm-hmm. How did you start it? And tell us the journey.
Yeah. Yes, my prior to this, I was VP of marketing in a Series D company called Reonomy.
Okay.
I'd actually left to go traveling, and COVID hit, and so I got stuck back home in New Zealand. For those that that's where the accent comes from. For those that don't know, New Zealand had extremely strict lockdowns during COVID. You couldn't leave the country.
Yeah.
I was like, shit, I can't travel anymore. What am I going to do? I took some time off, did the walks around New Zealand, and then just started contracting myself. And some people that I used to work with, some great companies like ClickUp, Medable, Oculus. I was doing a lot of myself. And I thought as I was doing it, having had a decent sized team before, I'd get frustrated because I'd start to solve one piece of the puzzle, and you'd be like, okay, it's not just running the campaigns, or it's not just fixing this. The problem's always deeper.
Yeah.
And that spurred me to be like, okay, how do you build a team or an agency that's like, hey, we're growing pipeline, but to do that, you need the breadth of talent. And that's where the idea of Utter was like, okay, I need RevOps people, creative strategists, creative people, web developers to make paid advertising work rather than just me contracting. And that's roughly the journey. And the first few years were incredible growth. I mean, it timed it with, SaaS and tech in general being amazing. It's been fortunate to have great clients and work with some great people as well.
So the pandemic was a good thing at the end of the day, right?
It worked well. Yeah, I think and for me it did. Now I've looked back that, there's a lot of fractional marketers, fractional CMOs. When I started it, I don't think there was quite as many, and it was just a good timing of able to turn that into an agency around it. But yeah.
And how big is the team now at Utter?
We're about 30, the core team. We have some specialist contractors and other people, but 30 is the team.
Wow, that's amazing. And before that, you were the VP of marketing at a Series D company?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Company called
Can you walk us through the journey? So basically, let's say after high school, after college, how you started your career?
Yeah, it's a little bit it's a zigzag. After high school, went to university in New Zealand, started a company with some other folks. That company, they've gone on and done real well with it. It didn't quite work out for me and the team there, and decided to try something else. That company, they've gone on and raised funds of, but that was good exposure into starting a startup and knowing this world, especially in New Zealand where there's limited exposure to tech companies. Moved to the US, had a temporary visa, so couldn't find a good job, and joined this company called Reonomy actually as an intern, because no one would take it on a short visa. Did well there. The company there was, I think, Series A. When I joined, it had a harder time, and the team was maybe compressed to 18 people from being bigger before. And then I got in there and then managed to do some good marketing for the company early on, and the company grew, and with that opportunity grew. So went from intern to VP in a couple of years. The company went from 18 people to 180 people. So it was just one of those fortunate runs where I had great managers. I had like an amazing CEO who like became a friend, and like I think he gave a lot of trust in someone learning on the job. But that was my like marketing education was in that role, and the
Amazing.
company exited. Trying to think what year, but I can't remember the years now. One of the COVID years, it exited to public Canadian company, so it was like a nice
Wow.
tie the bow, if you like. But yeah, that was my tech marketing journey.
Incredible. And the first internship, was it in marketing?
Say it again, sorry.
The internship was you working in marketing?
Yeah, it was just like, marketing intern. Marketing there was a VP of sales and marketing who, like, the budgets had been cut, and she was, Liz is her name, I think, was like, okay, I just got to find some interns to help me, like, hack this company. It was like classic, like, wall, back against the wall, I think. And so they had an army of interns and maybe one marketing person trying to
Amazing.
work out
how did you manage to secure this internship? Because for a lot of people, I will also ask you for the advice for young people. It's hard to get that first piece of experience, right?
Yeah, I was probably an overqualified intern. Like, is the is the honest answer? Like, it wasn't like I was living in New York on $12 an hour, 3 days a week when I first got there. It wasn't like the easiest of positions, but I wanted to start there. So how did I get it? I think I found it on Craigslist, actually. Like, I had no idea. I was in a hostel. I found it on Craigslist, went to maybe 3 different places, and this place had a good feel and fit to it. This is a while ago, so I'm trying to remember it all. In terms of internships now, I think, like, how would I get the job? I think, like, you get one, and I'm trying to hire like people trying again to hire people out of college, university now. It's like, it's attitude and rate of learning. Like, if you can show that, people like want to hire, and I think, like, in the interview process or outside of it, just going that extra distance, like showing you've thought about the company in some way. Like, if someone like sent me an email that was like, looking at your site, here's a couple of things I would change, or like, here's some ideas, graduate, I'd like probably hire them, because that initiative you actually very rarely see. So I don't think it's hard to stand out if you want an internship. It's just, you got to put a little bit of effort and research into target a few companies. I mean, I guess you'd probably think the same. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Attitude matters a lot, and the effort that you put in to actually stand out. But I was curious about your take, because it's a great story from intern to VP of marketing.
And I just work a lot. Like, I enjoy my work. I work hard. I think, like, it just adds up. Like, it's over time, and if you want to learn and you enjoy it, but
And how about your best piece of advice for a starting founder, someone that wants to launch their own agency, their own company, let's say out of college, or wants to get into the marketing space? What would be your best takeaway?
I guess if we're talking like specifically doing an agency, quite a few people ask me this, and like people that work at Utter, they want to sometimes like set one up, and I'm like, I don't know if I would if I looked back. Like, I think it's it's an easy business in a lot of ways. Like, on paper, you're like, okay, I've got to find people and then, like, teach them a system and then find clients. Like, it's easy on paper. The problem is your whole business, like all businesses are people, but your product is people, and like that at some point is always going to break, and so I think being ready for that and it being tougher for that is one part, and then just like focus in general, like do something smaller, like narrow down what you want to do, and just really nail that and go from there would probably be my 2 parts. Someone out of college, like wanting to start a business, I think it's good experience to just like when you've got that energy to do it. But I think going in a tech company, being there 3-4 years, like it's pretty invaluable as well.
Totally agree. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you have the experience and you can be a overqualified intern.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for
But
that.
yeah. I'd say the one part as well, like, and I think you've got an international audience, like coming from New Zealand to the States, like I didn't have I didn't have an American like essentially my CV or everything I'd done didn't really matter. And that's why like you've got to start a little, like a bit more entry level, I think, and work your way up, to get into the US market and to get that, relevant experience.
Yeah, absolutely. No ego at first. So this is an important
Exactly.
part. Yeah. I have one last question for you, Sam. I'm really
Sure.
curious if you have some favorite software tools that you use and would share with the audience.
Favorite software. I'm reasonably boring on this side. Like I think like I like we use ClickUp as our project management system. I love it. I know a lot of people hate their project management systems, but we couldn't live without it. And we're like a remote culture across time zones, so it's crucial there. And I think like at a market, everyone has HubSpot now in the tech world, and the fact that we can like use such an easy tool for so many functions is something to take for granted. So on those two sides, I remain like a passionate fan of. I'm trying to think of like any. I don't think of any like particular tech tool. Like what's on my phone now? Nothing that unique. The irony of like working in like marketing for tech companies, you use all these tools and then you just come back to the basics. But
Yeah.
I'm fairly boring on that side of things.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else that you want to tell us today before the podcast ends?
Anything I want to tell? No, I think like I guess maybe it's, if you're into marketing in a B2B, it is an interesting time, and like there are a few dynamics changing. Like one, the market overall is still tight. It is like sales are harder, deal lengths are tighter, and as marketers, we've got the compression of AI coming into force, like more remote talent around the world, and so I think like the next couple of years, even though there's so much change in how B2B marketing will be done and the resources for it, it's probably the time where there's just as much opportunity as ever. So I don't know if that is a solid closing thought, but if it's one thing that's on my mind, it's just it's the amount of change coming in our space at the moment, and seeing it as more of an opportunity than a problem.
100%. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for joining the podcast. Thank you for sharing all this value, and hope that the audience got a lot of value and they can come to you to start doing paid ads.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed. But thanks, Christian. Appreciate you having me.